Hey everybody, it's me. It's a little more low-key than the last video I just did. Got a little worked up. Um, but as I said, I'm recording this directly after the last video, although they'll be staggered quite a bit. I mentioned that I had picked up some blank covers and some red covers, red blanks lately from Space Monkey, where I pick up most of my comics. And that them being a small business and a local business that supports me as an independent creator and other independent creators and some small local vendors. They do things like consignment and carry the Bubba Patrol, carry Welcome to Pleasant Falls in their shop. Things like The Makeshift Man by my friend JoJo Seams. They've got Baby Vampire. They've also got Tribal Force there as well. So anyways, I've been picking up blanks. The cool thing is that they're going to be able to expand shortly into the next building space, which is great for a local business to be able to do such a thing after such a short period of time. So I'm really happy for them. I think that just means more opportunities for other local businesses, other vendors, things like that, to be able to get just, it just kind of works for everybody, right? So anyways, the last two I'm going to show you are going to be the red covers, because they are actually the last two that I did this past weekend. Now, one of these, this first one actually is one that I finished on last Friday, Friday the 13th, and is one that I drew and for the most part inked quite some time ago. But I decided to give it more of a whirl and to finish it up with some colors and tighten up the inks a little bit, give it some hatching, and then give it the white gel pen for some dimension. I've just been using the white gel pen a lot lately. In my last video, I talked about doing the remarks and laying down the white like Chrissy Zulo. I know a lot of artists use white gel pen or maybe lay down the white base for the remarks. However, I'm just going off the artists that I've seen and I'm emulating, but still doing it in my own way, right? So Ken Lashley, Lead Killa on Instagram, amazing artist. I really wish I had gotten a commission from him back when it still would have been tight for me, but it would have been much more affordable than his commissions are now. Rightfully so. He deserves to be able to charge what he's charging. It's just not price friendly for me at this point, but more power to him. That kind of goes off in a whole another topic of artists getting what they're worth and other artists not taking what they're worth, but wanting to remain accessible for people. And I'm trying to balance that a little bit because I don't have the name value to charge high prices. I think the prices I charge are pretty comparable for my output. Not necessarily my name value, not necessarily the amount of time that I've been doing this, which is a really long time. I've been drawing for almost my entire life, which is upwards of 40 years. I've been self-publishing comics for 20 years, almost 20 years. I've been developing characters and stuff for almost 30 years, actually, because it was 96 when I came up with Nash and Agnew. So those are my characters that have stuck the test of time. Anyways, so this piece, he's a one-off character in Batman the Animated Series. It is Condiment King. Like I said, I did all the line work except for the hatching and some of the black in the eyes, around the face, and along the pickle mask. Cowl? Yeah, I guess it would be a cowl. To make him look a little darker, a little more sinister. And then tried to use some complementing colors. Yellow and green are pretty good with being complementary to each other. And because of the tan nature of the cover, it actually takes like the flesh tones and the greens and it makes them a little richer and deeper, which is kind of nice in my opinion. Some people don't like the covers that have tone to them. There are some of them that are harder to work with because of the color of the cardstock. However, with this tan base, it makes the colors a lot more rich. It makes them deeper. So for me, I like that because then you can push things to be a little bit darker. You start a little bit lighter, and if you make something like a little too lighter, a little too dark, it'll pull the color even more and it'll saturate it. So you get this really, really vibrant color, and that's actually what it looks like in person on camera. Like, it depicts it really, really well. But I felt like this was a good representation. It's got a couple of reactions on the sketch cover page on Facebook. And somebody was just like, you just got to get the voice actor to sign it. I was like, that would be cool. It's a crime that character was only used one time. And I'm actually only one piece away from completing the Build-A-Figure, and that's the Mr. Freeze figure, which I already have 2 of. But I guess if I bought that, found it and bought it, I could just get rid of the figure and then keep, the backpack for him. Either way. So this next one is actually the one I finished before finally completing the Condiment King, and it is Magic. I love her. I don't know if this is her current design, but like the form before she goes to be Darkchild, I think it's just really, really a quality design. The Marvel Legends figure of this design is great. She's got the headgear piece, like the big shoulder pad and the spikes all down her arm. Just like the dynamics of the costume look really, really cool. The belt, not the belt, the boots, like all the strappies on the boots and the buckles on the boots is just great and works really well with the demeanor of who the character is supposed to be, right? So again, I added some of those colors to pop her a little bit more along in the hair, along the skin tone. And a lot of times I was fighting those and I was putting opposing colors on things. So I was putting, like, there would have been orange on here, but there would have been blues on here, and blues are purple on the skin. And that's the thing, is it would still be reflecting whatever light source was coming at it. So if it's reflecting a blue light source, then everything should have that blue light source on it. Maybe it should be a slightly different color of blue because of the material. So there might be a little more purple or a little more red on the light source reflecting here. Because her hair is blonde, you might add like a little bit of like orange or a tinge of like yellow grays in there as well. And then in the flesh tones as well. I decided to go with her eyes whited, so you can see the iris and the pupil a little bit on there, because she's like in her power-up mode. And then after I finished it, I started like lightly plotting out some like light source and energy source along here to go around her. And then I stopped myself because I started to think, like, I always do that. Even now that I'm trying to do or maintain the headshot and the busts for consistency and not overthinking things, that I was going right into overthinking it again. So I stopped myself. My buddy Gloria saw this afterwards and she was just like, no, I'm glad you stopped yourself, because a lot of people try to add all this other stuff, the ornamentation to it, but their work itself should be what sells the piece, right? It shouldn't be all this extra like gaudiness around it. Like, if your piece can't sell itself and you have to put in these like fantastic backgrounds or whatever for a standalone piece, it's not storytelling here. It's just a single image, right? And to an extent, I really, really trust that. She's also an artist. She knows things visually. She loves comic books as well. Magic is one of her favorite characters. So it's kind of, it's important to see somebody else's perspective, especially after I already made that decision, right? It's not like I was saying, well, what do you think? Do you think I should add that on there? Like, because I can still do it. No, I already made the conscious decision not to put the extra elements on there. And she's a little off to the side, right? Because what I've actually been doing with these last couple of covers, this one and the next two that I'm going to show you, is I've been roughing them out full size on 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and then I'm light boxing them into place, right? The roughs are really rough. I typically add them as an extra when somebody buys them. If I still have them on hand, I'll like cut them out or fold them up and put them in the bag and board. Being trained as a graphic designer, you're trained to use all the tools in your toolbox, right? And some people might see it as cheating, and they're like, you light boxed it or you blue lined it or whatever. If I'm getting an inked piece, I'd like it to be inks over pencils, right? Or a rough sketch and then cleaned up inks. But if you're light boxing and I'm still putting graphite to paper, and then I'm inking over it and coloring over that kind of thing. And a lot of times what I've done in the past is I've drawn my roughs at like this big, but then I'm trying to put them onto a sketch cover that's yay big. And so you'd either have to redraw it and then light box it, or you just have to kind of eyeball it and use it as a reference, which, depending on your preference, depending on your skill level, is what you do, right? I've found that if I get something done to a specific degree, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be able to get that perspective or to get those eyes the exact same way again if I try to freehand everything. But I've already created it that way. So why not use that as a mold? It's the same thing if you're molding something, you're sculpting it, and then you make a mold out of it, right? It's the same thing. Anyways, this was the first red cover that I did this way, which I'm really, really happy how this turned out. And it's blank on the backside, so light boxing it was also fairly easy, but you had to turn all the lights off to be able to pull the image barely through to be able to line it. And that is Omega Red. My favorite Marvel villain. I feel like he's one of the most underrated characters, not just in the X-Men, but in the Marvel Universe. And I believe I did a video where I talked about if I was going to bring the X-Men in, I would tie him into the Winter Soldier program. And then you see, the frozen claws along with the tendrils, and then that's how you bring the X-Men in. And they open through like another portal, or they've been hiding themselves, masking themselves, whatever. You don't need to do that now with the Deadpool thing. I haven't watched that movie. I'm not going to watch it, so spoilers. I hate Deadpool. I'm not a fan. I'm a fan that people read comic books and stuff like that because of that character. I'm appreciative of the character for that factor alone. I don't like the character at all. I could do a whole video about that. But I went with kind of the subtle, you can get like the cross-hatching. It's subtle cross-hatching. There's not a ton of it. I don't feel like I overdid it to any specific degree. And then I wanted to add a little bit of the gel pen. He used to have like the crown almost, or like I guess it would be the crown because it's on the crown of his head with the Omega symbol on it. I've always thought that was not even so much 80s as being like, or 90s as being very 80s with the headband look and the top knot. I always thought he should be updated a little bit. So part of my redesign, and I've done a couple of them of Omega Red, and they usually involve like a giant Omega tattoo all over his face. This is a branding on his forehead, and then adding the white where like the tech goes into him a little bit. Huge fan of this character. I have an X-Men 4 It's not a super high grade. I think it's still the one that I bought way back in the day. And then there's this one, which is Union Jack the Ripper, also from the Blood Hunt line. All of their blanks are red blanks. I don't know how many more they're going to come up with, but I did just pick up another Union Jack the Ripper #1 blank. Union Jack is kind of a boring character. He's got the balaclava mask, so like you don't really see what he looks like or anything. I thought, well, you could do some battle damage and have like the mask torn open, but that's I don't know. He's still kind of a boring looking character, not super well designed at all. So I started looking up like who are his villains, and there was a couple of villains that were like okay, they were okay. Batroc the Leaper was okay, and I guess it was a redesign where he kind of looked like Zartan a little bit, where he had like a hood on and stuff like that, and he wasn't quite as comical as he was previously. And then I don't know if this is a legit villain or not, but showed up in my online search of Union Jack villains. Jack-o'-lantern, but Union Jack the Ripper, Jack-o'-lantern, is also a Spidey villain, underrated Spidey villain, but a fun design at the same time. There's been variations and stuff, but I like the classic high cape or high collar caped Jack-o'-lantern. A lot of white gel pen used in this one to give more dimension. I probably overkilled it a little bit, especially with this eye right here. I feel like it really kind of takes it out. It does make it a center focal point, I feel, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because then it makes the piece a little hard to look away from, but also makes it a little eerie and terrifying, which is really the point of this character. I was thinking of doing something where like wanting like the flames and the fire to be pouring out of his eyes and his mouth. Not as easy to do on a red cover unless I was going to work with like some paint pen overlay. And I'm not wanting to do that just yet. Not feeling that confident in doing that with these red covers at this point. Maybe sometime down the future. But this was the last one I put together on Sunday. The 2 red covers I did on Sunday. So head sketches like these, if you're watching and you're interested in commissions or even to buy these specifically, these guys are $50 plus $5 shipping. The Magic, she would be considered a bust, almost a half torso. I'm doing these for $75. And then this is kind of like a bust plus because you get the arm and the hand with the weapon. But I would still do him at $75 as well, plus $5 shipping. So that's what I've been working on lately. I plan to get back in the groove with the Erica Slaughter figure, which I can't wait to do like a full reveal, especially once I do a new set. Like her hair and her head and get the mask put in place. I have a couple of plans for that because I'd like to do 2 head variations, one that's masked and another where I can just have the mask tied on, and if I switch the heads out, I can just put the mask on and it will kind of crumple around the neck like when she's got it pulled down. So we've got a couple of plans for that, but the first thing I'm going to fix on her is going to be the leg. And I would have loved to have done like a series of build videos that I just put together, but I never started the build video when I originally started working on her. So unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. Let's see. So I've been trying to ask questions along with these videos, like homework for you to do. Who is your favorite underrated? We'll go with villain. Who's your favorite underrated villain? Because there's 3 villains in this. Condiment King is definitely underrated because he was only ever once in the animated series. I don't know that he ever even shows up in the comics. Omega Red, I feel, is insanely underrated and has such a history with Wolverine. And we don't even get to see that often. We haven't even gotten a really good Omega Red figure as of yet. And then Jack-O-Lantern. I think it's, Red Goblin, Gold Goblin, Green Goblin, and I feel like Hobgoblin is probably the best of the goblins. But he gets pushed even below all those like 4 or 5 goblins. But he's a great design. So who is your favorite, actually, let me ask 2 questions. You can answer one or both. Who is your favorite design villain? And who is your favorite underrated villain? Who would you rate as the most underrated villain and the best designed villain? It can be an updated design as well. I'll see you guys next time. Take care of yourselves.